I hurried to finish my work in the half hour before sunrise. Then I left as soon as the corpse was interred.
Did you have reason to believe you might be discovered once the sun came up or something?
I had paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that the warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area.
Couldn't you just have paid off the warden too then? Dang it, controller! What an awkward moment to... Rest! There we go.
I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You could buy the silence of everyone, or the secret no longer a secret. Huh? The sunrise was at 4:40 that day. Which means it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting. Wait, that must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding.
How does Van Zieks know when the sunrise would be that day 10 years ago?
He was there. Also, Farmer's Almanac.
Yes, but just in the middle of court? They didn't even know they were going to be discussing the thing that happened 10 years ago, let alone, like...
That's his hobby.
That's all I have to go on.
What's your feeling, Mr. Naruhodo?
For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Drebber's plan. Now, if that's really true, then the professor is the only other thing we know of that links the pair of them. So I feel sure that the waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow.
In that case, we must use this cross-examination to uncover exactly what it means. Otherwise, the jurors are sure to revert their leanings and the trial will be over.
I agree, but interestingly, uncovering what the professor has to do with all of this means more to Lord Van Zieks than anyone. That's the impression I'm getting, anyway.
Yes, as do I.
After all, he has a profound connection to the professor as well. Okay, what are we doing?
The most recent statement we uncovered. So the very last one, I presume?
Good luck, cool name. The last one?
Okay, present.
Saving. We did a lot of reading.
You have little faith.
I have zero faith.
I appreciate that, because I don't have faith in myself either. Okay, for the last page. Can you examine that?
This?
Yeah. No. Next.
Next. What do you mean by next?
Next item.
This way?
Yeah. Next item. Next item. Can I see that?
What?
Can I see that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Next. 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 Okay, I don't think anything else is relevant. So, hop out. Go back a statement. Go back a statement. Go back a statement. Go back a statement. Okay, this is a question based on the fact that English is not my first language. What do they mean when they say interred? Like buried, and that's it,
Yeah.
right? There's no other subtext to it?
Yeah, when the body's buried underground after...
Yeah, but like it doesn't, there's no other meaning to that, right? Like it's not like, oh, when like they were killed and buried and that's what interring means. Like, interning literally means just putting them in the dirt.
Yeah, putting the coffin.
Yeah, closing the lid.
Burying the coffin.
Okay.
You know the phrase, burying the coffin. Like burying the hatchet.
You know, when you and I have arguments, we just need to bury a coffin.
Yeah, that's how you bond. I'm not gonna finish that. Okay.
Yeah, not when you're being recorded by yourself. Okay, sure. Next segment. Sure. Okay, next segment. Okay, next segment.
You seem to be struggling.
No, I think I have an idea of what it is, but like it's just like it. I'm confused because I think the vocabulary just doesn't make sense to me, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's like my brain isn't wrapping the thought around logically, and I think it's just because I don't understand how the words connect in a weird way. Like I understand the words, but you know what I'm trying to get at. Like
you
it's
can
like
ask a
confusing
question
to me.
if you have.
I think what it is that we do present the autopsy report of the professor. I mean, the confirmed by hanging thing, because it says at midnight, and if he was already like dead, something about how quickly he was buried after he was dead. Because it was like if it was 4:00 when she started, 4:10, and the sun rose as she finished, and it took her a half hour, that's 3 hours. That's at least 4 hours after death, so rigor mortis would have set in already. I think that's what we have to present, but like, is that logical?
That sounds logical.
Then present the autopsy report in this point.
On here?
Is that not it? Is that not the right place? What would the other one be? Go back? I guess there, yeah, because it was before the onset of rigor mortis. Yeah.
Madame Tuspels.
Yeah, for some reason, like I couldn't wrap my head around that logically without
time math.
I guess maybe that's what it was. Maybe because it was time, and I'm math, and I'm bad at math.
Time, and you're bad at time.
I'm bad at time.
Yeah, I'd be so much easier if we were in a universe without time. We could take care of that someday.
Everything just happens at all times and at no time.
No, neither of those statements make sense because there isn't time.
Yeah, things just exist.
I have here an autopsy report that was filed 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows.
And is that a problem?
I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another.
Quoi? Are you going to explain yourself, my Nipponese friend?
According to her testimony, Madame Tuspels was creating her wax impression just before dawn, and at that time rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, madam?
You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the chin was limp, so he could not have been dead for a long time.
But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Seith's report, it quite clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June.
No!
If the professor indeed died at midnight that day, then by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would have already set in.
Oui, yes, you are right. The chin. It would have been completely stiff.
In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection.
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd.
Nobody makes mistakes.
Everybody has those days.
In that
Everybody
case,
makes mistakes.
there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time.
Womp womp. I'm impossible!
Order! Council, this is beyond folly!
But, Your Honor, I'm impossible!
Not only do you indict the author of the report, Dr. Scythe, but you also implicate members of staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place. By a hook! Extraordinary! My day! Sorry, I did a lot of voices very quickly. They were all me.
My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact.
What fact?
The professor died that night without question.
Wait, he did. Of course he did.
I did something.
I moved the man's link jaw with my own hands. There was no...
Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows?
Did die at the... Are you insane? What? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case?
It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. We're not saying their name now. I've evidence that will explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Counsel, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution. I don't know if you know. You don't. You don't sound enthusiastic yet. Which evidence?
What really happened on the night of the execution? Go back. Go back. Next one. Next one. Keep going. Keep going. No, keep going.
Sorry.
Keep going. Keep going. Would it be that?
Why?
He was killed after he got out of the... After he was shot. And then killed. And Enoch Drebber's camera got blood on it. Is that what they want us to think?
Is it?
I don't know, present it. No.
What have we here?
Before considering the night of the execution, I would strongly advise the defense to concentrate on what is happening right now in this courtroom.
What?
Quit. The next time you present such a nonsensical article, Counsel, you may find that tonight is the night of your own execution.
Ah!
Jeez, that's a threat.
That's rough, buddy.
You made a mistake. We're going to kill you for it.
Okay, go forward one. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
What?
Keep going.
Did you realize something?
I think so. I think the neck injury is from the hanging, not from
That's
the drop.
Why hanging? This is Mr. Asman.
Keep going. I don't know. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. That doesn't make any sense. Keep going. Keep going.
Cool Name said Van Zieks only made one mistake, going into court with clothes on. I'm sure the jury would side with him instantly if he didn't have them on.
Keep going. Keep going. I'm gonna say it's this. I don't have a strong reasoning, but it's probably about something that the article reads.
I mean, all that matters with the article reads is there, but yeah, that.
Go ahead. Do it. No, I was wrong. Oh, wait.
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery.
You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now?
Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor published by the gutter press.
Can you be certain of that?
Are you serious?
The point is, as the article says, there was witness to what happened.
My word, yes indeed.
May we, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
May we what?
Objection!
May we continue?
Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up.
In any case, this is 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him.
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well.
What? Could you imagine not knowing this information?
Are you suggesting, Counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place?
Like, if you didn't know what he was referring to, you'd be so upset. You'd be like, Renosuke, what?
Yes, my lord. In fact, you could say he's right here before my very eyes.
You will substantiate your latest claim now, then, Counsel. Who is this alleged witness of the staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
That's so funny. It was clearly,
The
Iris.
Dix!
Oh, yeah. 10 years ago, she was being conceived at the cemetery.
Oh, God! No!
It checks out! The timing checks out!
The timing checks out for being born!
Oh, yeah, she was being born. She was being birthed. Well, no,
Yeah.
the timing can still check out because she may have been conceived early in the year. No, because the death was July, wasn't it? Yeah. No. Well, no, it could still check out because it's not July yet in this year, isn't it? We're in April, so she could be 10 turning 11 in July. Or after. I would still be right. But it's Odie Asman.
Take that!
I must say, I'm quite staggered by the scene I see before me now, Counsel. That of a young man with his eyes tightly shut, clearly pointing out a person at random.
At least have the decency to open your eyes and face the results of your blunder, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah,
What? Is this what you're referring to, not getting excited?
Not this specifically, but...
This is disgusting. Go back. I don't even...
I can't go back, I forgot to save!
Perhaps you should keep your eyes open when you collapse on a bench like that too, for safety's sake.
I bear it in mind.
you'll substantiate your latest claim now, then, Counsel. Who is this alleged witness, the staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
Fair enough. It's Enoch Trevor.
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber.
Drebber!
The previous witness?
The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tuspel's Museum of Waxwork recreates the decade-old scene in great detail. The condemned criminal emerging from the grave, and beside the tomb, a young man with the lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber. He used time travel.
He has Benjamin Button disease.
Order, order, order! Surely not, Council.
Drebber was there in Lowgate Cemetery.
What is all this talk about, Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant?
Of course, Madame Tuspels doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, Madam. To your situation as well, in fact.
What situation?
The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man.
No! But that would mean...
Madame Tuspels. Would it appear to you? It would appear that you know the name Enoch Drebber.
Yes, I know it. But from long ago in the past.
What?
Oh my.
Good gracious.
Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know.
Yes, of course. He was my lover.
She was 16!
We have many illicit affairs in the
He was in
cemetery.
college!
We conceived a beautiful blonde girl. Well, pink-haired girl. She became a wonderful genius. But, alas, I was in love.
You're
was-
telling me Drebber got
I was-
pregnant?
I was married to a doctor of medicine at the time. So I pretended that that was his child.
Sorry, I got lost in the fanfiction.
No, this is the worst fan fiction.
The story of a young man and the terrible sight he witnessed on the cemetery 10 years ago was published in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain.
Coolness of M. Preg.
No!
However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from in one newspaper.
You would think if one newspaper had the information, they would all have it.
The Daily Circus is a paper from which the article I have already shown the court.
I mean, with a name like the Daily Circus, I wouldn't have believed them.
Yeah.
She's saying that his full name was only published in that article.
Goodness me, yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms.
Unbelievable.
Oh yeah, it's right there. The very bottom paragraph.
Okay, yeah.
When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life in the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit from my house of horrors, whether it was the truth or not.
I see, so you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to sculpt the waxwork of the man, did you?
Exactement. He was studying science in the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. I paid him £5 to murder for the waxwork. And since that time, it had been in my museum to recreate the scene of terror from the cemetery.
Silence
Silence.
of the yams.
Silence of the yams.
So, 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals the waxwork model of the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today, even though the waxwork's build is a poor match for the victim and his face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage here had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Asmund, but that same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated, Dr. Scythe, would have noticed immediately. And yet she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court has seen earlier. Why?
Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying?
Dr. Scythe put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double.
Baba! Ah!
My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected.
But according to a missive I received this morning from the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case?
She told us herself, didn't she?
Ryunosuke's just trying to stir the pot at this point.
Lord Van Ziek's summoning won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it.
Lord Strongheart?
The Pandora's box you're roundabout is the professor's case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me.
For some reason, them talking out summoning witnesses made me think, what if they did an Ace Attorney gacha where you had to, like, do random draws to try to get witnesses
That'd be
to
rough.
solve the cases?
That is a rough buddy.
Just like, dang it! I just got in my 5th lot of heart. In my 12th old bag!
Nah, my 12-old man.
Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago. And surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zieks.
The prosecution calls for the instruction in that massive... The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped.
But Lord Van Zieks, the missive was issued from Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
As the assigned prosecutor has a final say on policy in any particular trial. In other words, me.
Yes?
Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together.
He's just like, screw everybody above me, I'm ignoring them all.
Order. Very well, I will uphold your request.
Coolness said the defendant is also a gotcha, so damn, I got my 50th Maya. I mean, that'd probably be less than the actual time she's been tried for murder, so.
Bailiff, send this subpoena with immediate effect and arrest Dr. Scythe of the forensic investigation team. The woman is compelled to attend on Her Majesty's orders.
Alright then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could never have committed. I'm just a stone's throw away, I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Jeez, Van Zieks is just like... it doesn't say... He's like, Van Zieks literally told... No, literally, your boss said we can't have her on the stand. And he's just like, I don't care. Screw that.
Yeah.
You okay?
Thanks
You seem
for your
distracted.
attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe. I just had a work email I have to answer real quick.
Oh, there.
I am disappointed in you, Lord Von Seeks. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office.
Betrayal is not in my nature as long as the truth isn't compromised. If it is, if there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his tail.
Salt, but okay.
Salt?
Worth his salt.
Worth his salt.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's fine. Worth his salt. That's iron.
Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Scythe, as the investigating coroner, you were the first on scene to examine the victim's body. It is the belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime.
And where's your evidence?
At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about, of course, the waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago.
You don't need to tell me. I witnessed a man's execution with my own eyes. And I officially pronounced him dead.
That remains to be seen.
Is that so?
According to newspaper reports from the time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life.
Don't waste my time.
And the sole witness to that mysterious event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? If what you saw at the grave that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction, but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe's. A secret so profound it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact. Mr. Drebber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Logate Cemetery. So he was a student who saw it.
You can see the resemblance, actually, can't you? With the man who spells, I mean.
Surely he's not going to claim that's really what he saw, especially not after all these years.
You was a research student. They're gonna be sure that you.
I'm not too clever for your own good if you ask me.
What an interesting twist. When at the time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, and suddenly my story matters, and in a court of law, too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes. Let's be frank. I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth. Why is Frank orange?
Listen, this game has just changed my perspective on what's important.
Of which orange?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Drebber, your testimony, please, about the events of that night, 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled upon in Logate Cemetery.
Yes, of course, as you wish.
Yes, is important.
I mean, yes is pretty important. The cemetery 10 years old earlier. The reason I was in Logate Cemetery at all nights... The The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we? Yes, the illustration of that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realized I never actually saw the professor. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model of me from wax. Then I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Wait a minute, you're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now? Of course. You have to have a screw loose if you believe a corpse could come back from the dead. But, so, you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I would think that would describe it perfectly, yes. Okay.
If the details in the article aren't true, it nullifies your argument for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Seitz would have been working together.
You have 5 screws loose, cool name? That doesn't sound very, very stable. So he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument.
Tell me, witness. You claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate?
That's right. Grave robbing, to be precise. As you know, Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So among students at the university, it had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts.
Grave robbing, you say?
Yes, exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead.
So you were the one of the so-called resurrectionists, a particularly unpleasant society.
Actually, my fellows and I went by another name. The Repurposers.
Mm-hmm.
That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir.
Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. The Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me a great many heartaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. It was the only paper with the bad grace to identify me unambiguously, I might add. I see.
Out of interest, who drew the illustration for this article?
Ah, yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Obviously, as time ticked on, I bitterly regretted what I'd done. Claiming to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish, very foolish.
Well, counsel for the defense. You may proceed to the cross-examination now.
At once, my lord. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say. By moonlighting, you mean grave robbing, do you? Surely you only need to look at the graveyard scene and my appearance to gauge the answer to that.
The lantern and spade.
Actually, it's a shovel. But who on earth would want to buy a dead body? Dang it, I wish they had the shovel argument right in court there.
That would have been so
Or like,
funny.
I mean, Ryunosuke tries to have it, and then like, Ben Zeeks is just like, is this really relevant? Any major oh, let's see it.
Any major hospital.
A hospital?
In order to better understand the human body, the study of anatomy is crucial to medical science. But there isn't a hospital in the world that has enough specimens to work with. Though obviously they can't openly express an interest in obtaining more by dubious means.
And as aspiring scientists, we young research students had no money to work with, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we made surreptitious arrangements with a hospital via some of our medical student acquaintances. We would never take anything of value from the graves. This was all for the furtherance of science, you see. That's what we all told ourselves every time we stole into the graveyard at night, spade in hand.
You realize body snatching is a serious crime. If you were caught, you could expect the gravest of consequences.
We students were caught between the hammer and an anvil. We needed funds for research. Professor Harebrayne said exactly the same thing.
I'm quite speechless at this apparent levity with which you have revealed this abhorrent behavior.
Well, if you wanted to know why I was there at Lowgate Cemetery, there's the reason. But I never expected it to end the way it did. That I regret to this day. Yes, the illustration of the newspaper article was witness I saw last night. The strange happening at Lowgate Cemetery, which you now deny. Not entirely. I ran to fetch the police at the time, you know. I was shaking like a leaf. But they didn't believe a word of it. In fact, I was very nearly arrested myself. So you went to the papers instead. I started big with the London News. Unsurprisingly, they didn't want to know either. In the end, though, it was reporters from the gossip rags, the gutter press, that came to get my story. And it spread like the plague through the capital as gossip-hungry Londoners lapped at the tale.
Gossip-hungry Londoners is my favorite board game that involves you whacking a creature to eat balls on the table.
I can barely even say the name of it.
I mean, I love it so much, I just get tongue-tied every time I try to say it.
The story was in every single paper at the time, with the exception of some broadsheets.
Oh, congrats, cool name. Good job.
Oh, did you beat it?
You beat Narwa.
What? Narwa! Hey.
And yet only two or three of them actually interviewed me personally. Most of the accounts turned out to be very interpretive ghost stories. What about the article in the Daily Circus? That particular journalist found me at my dormitory. I don't know how, but he discovered my name. So I recounted to him exactly what had happened that night.
Can you say exactly what happened that night with emphasis?
And from your description, he drew this illustration. I'm not even trying.
Ignored.
It's hard enough to talk in this voice.
No, fair enough.
Precisely. It's how I learnt that the condemned man was the infamous professor. Because the reporter told me so. I had no idea myself, you see.
Newspaper reporters are wont to snoop around in matters that don't concern them.
Yeah, I'm proud of your cool name. Good job.
The scene portrayed in the illustration is accurate, then?
Well, why are you asking if it's accurate? Didn't we hear the whole testimony first?
I replied to the email, by the way, so we're good.
What are you talking about?
My work email, Ryunosuke. Jeez.
I think I explained it already, didn't I? Lowgate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So it was renowned among us students at the university for being haunted by ghosts of condemned convicts.
Among Us. Someone's being a real sussy baka.
Hey, Among Us has ghosts.
Yeah, it does.
I guess
And you have
technically
to-
of convicts.
And you have to inspect the bodies.
For some absurd reason, I was scared of the graveyard at night. As a result, I only too willingly to believe that nonsense about the dead coming back to life. But you said you actually saw it. I said I'd seen what I'd seen in my mind's eye. After all, resurrection is impossible, isn't it? You'll have to be unhinged to think otherwise.
With that smile.
Unless, of course, you have some evidence that proves I encountered the professor that night. I don't know. Is there any material evidence that could show he really did see the professor?
If you have anything at all, Mr. Naruhodo,
I know, I need to present it against that irritatingly backtracking statement of his. The point is, that night was a pivotal moment in my life. Afterward, visited by the young woman. That young woman being mad into spells, of course. Precisely, I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later.
as I have explained, I went by the name published in the article, and comme ça, I found the man.
Yes, the article in the Daily Circus, I think you said. I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And a young lady put £5 in front of me. No worries, Colin.
So you readily considered you readily consented to having a waxwork of yourself made and gave permission for it to be put on display.
I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded.
Ah, oui. I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day, n'est-ce pas?
Did you? I can't say I remember. What was it, madam?
It's camera.
Ah. Oh yes, I made a point of taking it with me wherever I went. I made an excursion into any cemetery.
You took a camera with you, sir. To what end?
To record the details of the bodies I disinterred. But I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it.
I see.
But I still have it, monsieur. It is part of the special exhibit in my House of Horrors.
All is forgiven
For what?
for being really upset that they thought that the camera was going to have footage. But they didn't know that. They didn't know that. So, like, I'm still upset.
But they assumed that.
They assumed weirdly. Why would you assume that a decoration is going to have a photo of the crime scene?
Because I'm already
Like,
in
they
a
were-
universe where everybody has pun names, so like logic doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Like, they're correct. They were correct that it should have footage of the crime scene, but, like, that's weird. Like, if I were to be in court and be like, yeah, this model recreation of the murder definitely has photographic evidence somewhere inside of it because this little creature here has a camera. No, like, that's weird.
I am very meticulous about such details. It's the two-spell way.
Oops.
It would seem, then, that this very camera that Mr. Trevor took with him to Logek Cemetery on the night in question.
Yes, interesting. Details of the camera have been updated in the court record. And I gave up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and that was all because of that newspaper article. This article, you mean? published in the Daily Circus. This one right here. This is why you gave up on your dream? Right here? This? Yes, somebody informed the Dean that it was my name that appeared in the article, and carelessly let slip that night after night I was digging up graves. Hardly a model student, you might say. The university's reputation was execrably, some word, defiled, and I was expelled as a result. Execrably? I'd never seen that word. I think they made it up.
Mon Dieu, I have no idea.
And having been run out of the university, you found employment in a somewhat specialist trade.
You combine your knowledge of science with knowledge of stage magic to create various experimental machines intended to demonstrate never-before-seen technology. And you use those deceptive machines to trick the government and private investors into giving you money. Professor Albert Harebrain was just your latest victim, wasn't he? Whatever are you talking about? I have no recollection of doing anything of the sort. What's Drebber up to? Why would he suddenly change his tune and recant his claim?
I wonder if perhaps it's because the circumstances have changed now.
What circumstances?
Well, if he admits they haven't seen the professor emerging alive from grave 10 years ago, it will expose a secret in Dr. Sykes' past that she would desperately want to hide.
Yes, of course. If Drebber and Dr. Saith are working together now, then if Drebber were to betray her, there would be no reason for her to continue to cooperate. In that case, there's only one way around it. I'll have to prove he really did see it. Prove he really did see the professor's corpse coming back from the dead as he originally claimed.
Yes, Mr. Naruhodo, exactly.